right. Hello, everybody, and welcome back. We are here with episode number 16 of the 306 Fantasy Football Podcast, and we are like moments away from draft day. We've got a big draft coming up here between the three of us. Actually, the podcast will drop on the day of our draft day. We've got our 306 Fantasy Football Charity League draft coming up here. The boys are getting fired up, and this week we have the episode of the draft day special. We're getting everybody tuned up and ready to go for their drafts. We're going to be going hard in the paint here with some of our ADP darlings, guys that we really like at their current ADP. We also have a deep sleeper of each of ours. And then we're also going to be sharing kind of the 306 stamp of approval of three players that we all like. The My Guys episode, as referenced in the Fantasy Footballers podcast, they do the very similar thing. There's other podcasts that do the kind of the same idea as well, where they share their three guys that they're kind of all in on this season that they're going to make the big jump and could be potential season winner or winners for your leagues at their ADP, at their potential breakouts, et cetera, et cetera. So we got a lot in store here for you guys with going into our season right away here. We're making the transition away from obviously our previous episodes where we had the certain segments, and we're obviously now going once a week, which we have the last couple of weeks here. So we're going to see a bit of change and a bit of transition. Right now, we're kind of in that tweener stage where we're kind of in the season, we're kind of not. But obviously, the next couple episodes, you'll see the brand new segments here from the 306 Fantasy Football Podcast, and we'll be getting into our full routine of the fantasy football season. So the boys are excited about this one. Let's check in on the fellas before we get going here. So Armand, what's new and exciting? I know you came by, stopped at the house, helped me out a little bit today, so we did a little catching up, but tell everybody what's new and exciting.
All right. Well, I just did a draft last night. It was for the 6-team league I'm in. And yes, you heard that right. 6 teams, not 16. That's just 6 guys drafted. It's a standard league, so no points per reception. I think it would get a little ridiculous if we did that. And we just switched it. So now the third receiver slot is now a flex spot, and the flexes in this league are just receivers and running backs, no tight ends. So yeah, I'm happy with how I came out though. With this new development, it made my choice of going RB heavy at the beginning of the draft even more desirable. And I think I have a pretty good crew here because I'm able to start 4 RBs. So I have Jackson as my QB. I got Chubb and Zeke and Carson and Najee are going to be my 4 RBs that I'm starting weekly off the bat here. I got Lockett and Ayuk starting for my receivers, and I got Darren Waller. I was hoping to get Kelsey, but I didn't pull the trigger fast enough on a tight end, so I took what I considered would be the next best guarantee, because we just don't know with Kittle coming back from injury if he'll be as good as he was. Hopefully he is. But I got Darren Waller there, and then my bench is Edmonds, Javonte Williams, Jamar Chase, Terry McLaurin, Jalen Waddle, and Robert Woods. So I think I got a pretty good crew there. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I think you should probably put McLaurin in your starting lineup.
Yeah, he's one of my favorite players going into this year. Especially we talked about going running back early. I'm all in about McLaurin. I bought McLaurin off Zach. We talked about that a little bit last episode, but yeah, I'm all in on him. I really like Terry McLaurin going into the season. But 16 league, man, that's like if you have one player that has a tough week, that's all she wrote. I think that's a tough way to try and navigate your starting lineup, I think. But
yeah, it's definitely a tougher one because you got so many choices. It's not just like I know who I'm starting. It's everybody on your team could be a starter in any other league, right?
Yeah.
So you really have to be careful how you choose. It's very matchup dependent too.
For sure. So what about you, Zach? What's been keeping you busy? I know you're getting hard at the ADP, ready for the big draft tomorrow as well, but what's been keeping you busy?
Just getting ready for work, getting ready for school. We go back here with no kids for about a week here, and then on the 1st we start welcoming the kids back. So hopefully we get back to what we had a couple years ago as far as getting back to normal in the classroom. So it's exciting times.
For sure. Man, I just got back from Fort Capel, had a nice little friends weekend, getting together with a few buddies. Shout out to one of my good buddies. We'll be talking about him a little bit here on the podcast about the charity league. He's one of my best friends, and he's a huge fan of the podcast, and he's on the charity league bowl as well. So big shout out to Robbie Gates hosting us down for the weekend. Shared some craft beers together over the weekend, and he gave us his best critique of what he thought of the podcast so far. So it was a lot of fun to talk football with him, and then obviously got to get together with the rest of the friend group a couple of days following after that. So it's nice to catch up with the good old high school and elementary friends that I haven't got to see in what seems like 4 years at this point with the way things have been going. So got back and now hard at Renos and back to work, and I'm trying to make a football playbook, and it's been a gong show lately, but I'm excited to be back. Excited for kind of what feels like real life to be kicking back into transition here. So before we get started, we mentioned it last episode, and I'm going to finally drop it now. We've got full confirmation of all the teams. Everybody's in. And we are setting to prep our draft right away here. So the 306 Fantasy Football Charity League, big shout out to these individuals for stepping up, and congratulations for being in the inaugural first season of the Charity League. So we have Connor Fox, Tyler Rock, Josh Lilly, Robbie Gates, Justin Primo, the three boys from the NC Square podcast. So they are co-sharing a team together. Brian Witherspoon, who was one of our interviews, and NFL alumni, Super Bowl champion. Stephen Horrell, a team of St. Mary staff that we are in a league together. Dwayne Garrow, Dave Cito, and Chris Phelan. So shout out to them as well. We're co-managing a team as the 306 Fantasy Football Podcast. And then concluding the list is Brady Woodcock and Logan Fossum. So we got a good balance of guys from Saskatoon, Regina, Fort Capel, PA. We've got a good list, and we had quite a few applicants. Unfortunately, everybody didn't quite make the list, but it was a matter of pulling the names, and kind of who got lucky was there. So lots of guys we're hoping maybe be able to expand next year and get even more guys in, and obviously the more the merrier when it comes to charity. So that's the 12 teams that will be in our very first charity league. So big shout out to them, and we'll be kind of highlighting some of these individuals as the season progresses along as well too. So
that's a pretty good crew of guys, I think, there, eh?
Yeah, we invited everybody into the group chat. We're doing on Sleeper. I've become a big fan of Sleeper in the last couple of years. And one thing I really like about it has a nice like a communication platform attached to it. We invited Witherspoon, immediately starts trash talking immediately. It was Brian Witherspoon has entered the group chat, immediately starts chirping about how he's going to win the league. So you got to love it. We're starting to get to that time of the year here. Draft's going to be set right away. Everybody's kind of voting on the poll. And then we're going to set the draft spots by doing a 100-yard dash virtual run, kind of similar to how we've done in other drafts. So we'll set one of those up. We'll share that on our socials, and we'll be off to the races. So I guess we could probably finally get this episode going here. This is a big one. We're going to look back at this one, what seemingly probably about 9 months, maybe not quite a year down the road, and say, oh boy, was I right, or oh boy, was I wrong. But we're telling you guys that we're kind of all in for here moving into the season. But first, we'll get started with a little bit insiders and headliners. So short but sweet this week. A couple of things to mention. CD Lamb is on the COVID IR. Obviously a big name, big breakout candidate here. Guys that are hard in the paint for CD Lamb this year. Gonna have to kind of maybe take a step back and maybe see if his draft position is going to dip a little bit. We don't know what the COVID. We know last year a couple of guys battled with that, but CD Lamb is on the COVID IR currently. This one happened just this afternoon, right as we were getting ready to record. Henderson hurt his hand in Rams practice, so we're gonna have to monitor that one. It was very vague report, so we don't exactly know what to expect kind of moving forward. So we'll have to keep our eyes peeled on that one. We've had some really good performances in the preseason. We're going to continue to monitor those and try not to get super overwhelmed and super hot and bothered and start crushing some of these ADP. But the one thing that we've been kind of monitoring a little bit on the podcast is the veteran quarterback and the young rookie quarterback, and kind of some of those battles. And we have one right now that is emerging in a very unusual fashion. So maybe we'll go to our New England specialist here to discuss the quarterback dilemma that is happening in New England. So maybe you want to share with everybody what has happened right now and why all of a sudden they're making the transition at this moment.
Yeah, so if you've been paying attention to the New England Patriots over the past couple of months, depending on who you listen to and which articles you read, it seems like it's been a dead heat so far between Cam Newton and Mac Jones for the starting quarterback spot. Through the past 2 preseason games, Cam's been the starter with Mac coming in later on, but now it's just a few days ago, I guess on Thursday, after the second game, it really became clear that both quarterbacks could be the starter, and that it looked like Newton would get the nod just because of his veteran presence and his experience in the system. But this morning when I woke up, all over my phone, all over my Twitter, was news that Cam Newton was on a modified COVID list, I guess, as a result of him being away from the team and not being able to pass some of the COVID tests while he was away, or not getting the proper COVID tests, perhaps. And now he has to sit out the next 5 practices, and this is going to give Mac Jones an opportunity to practice with the ones, get way more reps than he has been. He doesn't have to share reps with Newton now, and I hope he's not sharing reps with Brian Hoyer. So now he's getting the bulk of the reps with the ones, and on Thursday he'll be practicing against the New York Giants, pardon me, as part of their joint practices before their preseason game. So this is a really big opportunity for Jones, and I wouldn't be surprised if he's able to show that he belongs. And if that's the case, there may be a surprise cut coming out of New England in the next couple of weeks.
That if that transition happens before the season starts, then I am all over. You're my guy. And I'm not going to give it away too much, but my goodness, if that transition happens, Zach Strong looks like an absolute genius at that current ADP. So
more so than usual.
Yeah, just another hat he's going to wear and another feather in the cap. So before we get rolling here, fellas, did you guys see that hit in the Chicago Bears game? Talking about rookie quarterbacks. Oh my goodness. How he got up and walked away from that. For those of you that haven't seen this in the what was it, the second half, because they changed quarterbacks, right? Because Andy Dalton started the first half, and then he went in the second half, and oh my goodness. Okay, first of all, that game was a write-off. Like Buffalo absolutely steamrolled them, and it was embarrassing. But Trubisky looked actually not half bad in that one. But my goodness, if you haven't seen that hit, you guys got to go take a look at it. Like helmet gone 20 yards back, targeting. It was pretty bad hit, but yeah, that was a vicious hit.
I think he hit him so hard his headband flew off too.
Oh man, there's a funny picture. I think it was on the Pick Six podcast, the Barstool one, I think it's called. They had a funny picture of him and he's getting up from they're like, welcome to the league kind of thing. And then they had a picture of him and he's just like cross-eyed and he was like, he just looked dismantled, but obviously not too banged up. He's I think that transition might happen sooner rather than later too. Like he looked pretty good, and the Chicago fan base was pretty excited to see him out there the last couple preseason games. But that'll do it for insiders and headliners. Pretty short and sweet one this week. Not a whole lot going on. I think this next upcoming episode we'll start to see a lot more potential cuts, stuff like that as we enter into the season and our final couple weeks here. But we are obviously transitioning away from our standard. So keep trade cut is no longer a thing until the upcoming off season. Maybe we'll have a odd one here and there as maybe a filler of something like that, but it is no longer going to be a continuous week to week segment. And then hot takes are also in the rear view mirror as well. So this one's going to be just a different episode. We're going to start off with our ADP darlings, and we'll go in rotation, and then we'll hit up the sleepers and then finish off with our my guys, and that will be our episode this week. So all guys that we are kind of maybe giving you the pitch or the confidence that you need to target these guys in your upcoming drafts. Because I know as soon as this week, like Armin mentioned, he drafted yesterday. We have a draft coming up the day this podcast airs. And then they have another one on the Friday, if I remember correctly. And then the week after that, we have 3. And then essentially a week from that, we are into the NFL season. So we are ready to go here. Why don't we start it off with Armin? Armin, maybe tell us your ADP Darling, and maybe give everybody a little bit of an explanation what that ADP Darling tag means.
All right. So ADP Darling is he's a guy that you see there sitting at his ADP and you're like, oh, I love that. I got to get me some of that. He looks like a guy that will definitely outplay his ADP. The guys around him, he's definitely better than them kind of guy, right? So my ADP Darling is Josh Jacobs from Las Vegas. Now, I went last week talking a little bit about this, how I don't think Drake's going to eat into his workload as much as people think. He's still going to be a top end RB. And right now you can get that top end RB in this end of the second, beginning of the third round. Okay. Like I've done a few mocks and he's been going even like mid third in those mocks. So if you're kind of thinking, yeah, I want to do 2 RBs right off the bat, he is a guy that you can definitely get as your second RB. And maybe if you're lucky, you could even get him as your third RB. The only guy in around that area that I like better than him, or well, maybe I shouldn't say better, but close to him is Carson. But otherwise, you got McLaurin, who's a pretty good player, but I'll take the workhorse RB over McLaurin. You got DeAndre Swift, who a lot of people are saying that team's not going to be very good, right? Allen Robinson, again, I'm taking RBs before wide receivers. I like Jacobs and Carson better than Montgomery too, right? So I'm eating Jacobs up at that spot there. I'm loving it, and I can't wait to pick him there.
Zach, your ADP Darling, let's hear it.
All right. So out of the 5 guys that I'm going to be talking about today, I actually feel the lowest or the worst about this guy, but the value I think is just, it's too good to pass up. Right now, the 72nd player based on ADP is Michael Thomas. He's being drafted as wide receiver 30 right now. Last year at this time, he was the hands down wide receiver 1. And in most drafts, regardless of the scoring settings, he was usually a top 8 pick. Last year wasn't a great season for Thomas compared to what he's been in the past. He played in 7 games, and that injury's kind of carried over into the off season and into the preseason. And it looks like he's slated to miss anywhere from 3 to 6 games this season. On top of that, obviously Drew Brees isn't there anymore. And right now there's a QB battle between Taysom Hill and Jameis Winston. And I actually think whoever ends up winning that battle for the QB1 spot is going to be just fine for Michael Thomas, though. In the 4 games Thomas played last year with Taysom Hill, he averaged 7.5 receptions, 9.2 targets, nearly 86 receiving yards, with a run-first quarterback in Taysom Hill. And I think if Winston comes out and wins the job, Mike Evans' season from 2019 is a realistic comp for Michael Thomas, and that would be about 67 receptions, 8 TDs, and about 1,200 receiving yards. Like we're looking at a guy in Michael Thomas who has the pedigree of the wide receiver 1 on his team, and always in that conversation for wide receiver 1 in all of fantasy. And to get him at the wide receiver 30 in the middle of the 6th round, I think that's just too good to pass up. Do I think he's going to be, that the number 1 receiver this year? Absolutely not, especially if he misses more than 3 or 4 games. But he's somebody that for the back 2/3 of the season could certainly be your wide receiver 1.
Yeah, if he even if he gets traded, like his values can't get much worse. Like he was going at the 107, 108 last year, which was
exactly
insane.
This is like an all-time low for him.
Yeah. Yeah, especially if we're looking at the dynasty lens, I think this is by far the cheapest you'll ever get them. And then even into the redraft, like you said, you ain't buying them any lower than this. So, my ADP darling is a guy I even considered kind of potentially being a my guy, but I didn't quite have the load of confidence, kind of like Zach had mentioned there. But my guy is Antonio Brown. So currently, right now with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and he is being drafted at ADP 99. So slotting him kind of in the rounds 9, 10 ish in those rounds. And you are looking at him as the wide receiver 39. So the part of the reason, I guess, the arguments of why he is where he is he's in the three-headed monster between two other very good receivers. Mike Evans, who is currently the wide receiver 13, and Chris Godwin, who is the wide receiver 14. But one of the reasons why I like Antonio Brown is because of the connection that he has with Tom Brady. Like, people are forgetting he lived with Tom Brady. Like, he literally lived in his house. So the connection between the two of them, just as individuals, is quite strong. And he ended up joining the Buccaneers in week 9. So at week 9, he started kind of settling himself into that offense. Started out a little bit slow, but then after that, it was just steady Eddie from there. The targets, he had 61 targets and 45 receptions in just those up to week 16. I didn't count for week 17. It was because I'm looking at the fantasy stats. He had 61 targets from week 9 on and 45 receptions. You were looking at a guy that could consistently get you 10 to 12 points. And when I'm looking at guys, those late rounds, you're looking at guys that either you're going for the boomer bust that are probably going to drop, or you're looking for those plug and play guys. And I don't think we've seen the ceiling for Antonio Brown at this point. I mean, while Mike Evans, you're looking at a round 4 pick, maybe even round 3. Chris Godwin's in the same boat, obviously a wide receiver 13, 14 back to back. But Antonio Brown is not, even from in my eyes, not much of a separation from talent between the three of them. They're all three very talented receivers. Yes, Antonio Brown is quite a bit older. He's on the back end of his career, but I think he still has it. And there is obviously a solid connection between the two. So when you're in those late rounds and you're looking for those kind of dart throws or guys that can pan out for you, you're looking at Antonio Brown. That is going to be steady Eddie, 9-10 points with serious upside. So that is why I really like Antonio Brown, especially at his current ADP. Armand, your deep sleepers. So for those of you at home, deep sleepers, like, these are guys that are going very, very late, maybe even undrafted. So once again, we're talking about those dart throws. Like, these are the guys that are like, you can just borderline cut them after week 1 if it doesn't really pan out. But these are guys that we're kind of maybe giving you a little bit of a little boost or a little bit of a confidence burst on why maybe we're doing our dart throw on these specific guys. So Armin, you want to share your deep sleeper?
Yeah. All right. So my deep sleeper, he is a guy that you will know pretty quick into the season whether or not you should keep him or not. So he's definitely one that you can take him late in drafts and then drop him right away, and you'll know whether or not. But what if I could tell you, you could get a potential wide receiver 1 for a team undrafted? What would you say about that, Jordan?
I feel like I already know where you're going with it, and I'm going to like it.
All right. So, yes. So my guy, my deep sleeper here is Tyrell Williams. Okay. Now, Jordan, you're a Lions fan. What do you think are the odds that he's wide receiver 1 for the Lions?
Yeah, it's you spin the wheel. You're going to find out real quick the reports are that he's looking real good in camp. If I was going to put my spin the wheel on a rookie, I mentioned on the podcast who my Detroit receiver is. But I mean, everybody on that receiving room has just as likely of a chance. Just Tyrell Williams has proven it more than anybody else in that room.
Yeah. And Goff, although not Matty Stafford, has produced fantasy relevant receivers in the past, right?
Yep.
So Tyrell Williams could potentially be the wide receiver 1 for the Detroit Lions, and he is pretty well going undrafted in most leagues here. Like his ADP here, best is 109, worst is 370. He's sitting at 296. So as you can see, pretty well undrafted. So you can just wait till the very end and then just pick him up as a flyer, or if you want to pick him up waiver wire week 1 or week 2, go for that as well, as it's starting to come out. But he could have that potential. He's put up 1,000-yard season in the past. That was his last like fully healthy season. He's been kind of battling injuries since then, but he's still been respectable with his yardage totals, putting up 700 and then 2 600-yard seasons. Not great, but for last round guy undrafted, not too bad. So that's my deep sleeper for you guys. You could get a wide receiver 1 undrafted, Tyrell Williams.
I kind of forgot. So at first I thought he set out the season because of COVID. He had a season-ending injury in the preseason, right? Like if he could stay healthy, we don't know. Like it's been 2 full seasons since we've seen him healthy. But last time you saw him, he was pretty sharp, and he was definitely one of those guys that you picked up late in your drafts, and it definitely panned out. Like I think he was like going around the 6th round, 7th round, I think, if I remember correctly, the last time we seen him, and he put up some pretty good numbers. So if he can stay healthy, I can definitely see the path to success for him. So
yeah, and it sounds like he has been healthy, and like you said, he's been looking good in camp, and he's a guy that can produce big numbers if given the opportunity.
Yeah. Zach, your deep sleeper. Let's hear it.
Well, I definitely thought I was going to have the latest ADP for my deep sleeper, but I guess not. So without further ado, I want to take off my regular hat and put on my Patriots hat for this one.
Look at that.
Alrighty. So my deep sleeper is shouldn't be a surprise to you guys that have listened to the podcast before. It's none other than Jacoby Myers, wide receiver 65, ADP of 182, and you can get him in the 15th round. Much like Tyrell Williams, you're probably you don't need to draft him. You can probably get him off the waiver wire. One thing though I would say is don't let guys like that, Williams or Myers, go undrafted, and don't let them sit on the waiver wire after week 1. A guy like that where you think's going to produce right away, draft or pick him up before the first set of games, because after that first set of games, you're going to have competition to try to get those guys. Get them before they play their first game. So Myers, he didn't start the season for the Pats last year. It wasn't until week 7 that he stepped onto the field. And from week 7 on, he was the wide receiver 22 in PPR formats. This offseason, the Pats upgraded the skill positions, brought in 2 proven NFL receivers in Aguilar and Bourne, brought in 2 top 10 tight ends in Henry and Smith. And through it all, through the first 2 preseason games, Jacoby Myers is still the number 1 target, and he's one of the highest rated receivers through the first 2 preseason games by PFF. By the looks of it, regardless who the quarterback is, whether it's Newton or Jones, the quarterback play will improve in New England from last year, and that is only going to help Jacoby Myers. Much like what Jordan said about those late round guys, I wouldn't expect Jacoby Myers to be a big boom type of guy, but he's going to be super, super safe for you. He's going to give you 10 or 12 points every game, especially in PPR formats. So just a nice steady Eddie guy to have either as like one of your flexes or bye week or injury insurance for sure. So don't make the mistake of waiting for or after the first game to pick up Myers. Make sure you have him before that first round of waivers go through.
Yeah, there's no surprises there. If you've listened to the podcast at all, you knew that that he was either going to be one of Zach's my guys or he was going to be mentioned in this podcast episode at some point. But Armin, you bought the dip, man. You're trying to trade for him in our dynasty league. You're all in on him just because of what Zach's mentioned, I think.
Yeah, like he's been talking about him so much, and eventually you start looking into him, and it's like, oh yeah. And I've been paying attention a little bit preseason here, and like Zach said, he's looking good in the preseason. And wide receiver 22 for those last week 7 on, right? That's pretty good value at undrafted, I'd say.
Yeah. Same as kind of how Zach had mentioned. If you've listened to this podcast, you might have to go into the deep takes here. This one is even before Zach joined the podcast. My hot take was about the individual that I am going hard in the paint for late at drafts. And once again, kind of similar to Zach, I'm putting my fan base hat on to make this decision. And maybe that's why I kind of have a little bit of sniff and why I think this is going to pan out. But my deep sleeper is Jamal Williams, running back for the Detroit Lions. Currently in ADP, the pick 122. The running back 44 being taken. So that puts them kind of in the 10th, 11th round, depending on your formats. But in 12-team leagues, it puts them around the late 10, early 11-ish is kind of where this ADP is. Also, like Armin had mentioned, sometimes undrafted. So Jamal Williams, the arguments against him is he is potentially the number 2 running back in a team that has historically not ran the football, and a team that is trending to be a not successful football team this upcoming season. So there is a lot of arguments to maybe why you should be hands off on Jamal Williams, but I'm going to kind of tell you why I have a feeling, or I believe that he is going to be someone you're going to want to pick up late in drafts. So the first one is DeAndre Swift. And DeAndre Swift, I love him. I was so happy that the Lions drafted him. But he's been battling injury, and he has had issues with the concussions. He's been nicked up, and he had a groin injury in camp. So he's already entering the season kind of nicked up. And if you go back to last season, watching Jamal Williams with the Packers, and I'm not comparing obviously the Lions offense to the Packers offense by any stretch of the imagination here, but the Packers offense was very successful running 2 running backs. And you saw Jamal Williams get the hurry up offense because he is very, very good at catching the football. So he already has that PPR scoring upside because he can catch the ball so well. And the argument that, well, the Lions haven't really run the ball in the past, this is a totally different organization, totally different. They hired Dan Campbell, who is a man's man and wants to pound the rock nonstop. We might be losing game by 45 points and we're still going to run the ball. That's kind of how this team is going to operate. So they're setting themselves up for success. And this was one of the very, very first signings that the Lions made with the new regime. They went out, got their guys. They want to be tough. They want to be hard-nosed, and they made a point of signing Jamal Williams. He's also, if you pay attention to Lions camp at all, Jamal Williams has already become a very big fan favorite of all the fans and the players in the organization already. He is somebody that you just want to cheer for. He's somebody that has had standalone success in a 2-headed monster in the past. And to throw in there that was Swift with the potential injury history already and some question marks entering the season, to pick up a possible guy that is either going to share the load or could take the load over in this late. Jamal Williams is a sneaky pickup. So I think especially if you're going running back early in your drafts, where say you're picking up the Kamaras, and then you come back in the next turn with your CEH or your Najee or your Chris Carson or whoever it may be. And then you can, or Montgomery, I guess that's another guy we've kind of pumped the tires on a little bit this last episode. If you can pick up Jamal Williams as your 4th, 5th, 6th, and you can go hard in the paint with the receivers in that 3rd, 4th, 5th round and kind of come out with a nice level team, Jamal Williams is a guy that you can hold on to and you can plug in for bye weeks. And he's just going to, I personally believe he will just be a consistent guy. He could get you the 8, 9, 10 points. He's not going to maybe win you a week necessarily unless there's injury, but he's definitely not going to lose you a week. And we've seen that historically from Jamal Williams in the past. So So I love Jamal Williams. I like what he brings to the table for Detroit Lions, and he is going to be on a lot of my fantasy teams this upcoming season.
That's
Yeah,
two
how
more
can you
Detroit
not
Lions
like
than I expected to see on this list. Holy smokes.
him? That's why they're sleepers, man. It's Lions. Nobody's drafting them.
Yeah.
But how can you not like a guy like Jamal Williams, man? Like he is a handcuff that with that offense is going to be pounding the ball. So if Swift is out, watch out. Like he could be putting up some pretty good numbers too. So
Even Swift at his ADP, let alone right now too, is much too low. Like he's going behind all the big names. He is kind of right in that 4th round ish, like hit and miss, kind of depending on, like, it's obviously the running backs, they vary a little bit, but yeah, with him, even Swift, like you can make an argument for why you could get him so late too, but obviously I'll wait even longer and pick up old Jamal. So okay, well, that'll do it for the other two. Now we're going to get into the big ones. These are the ones that if we go back and we look and we're wrong, we're going to look like a couple of meatheads here, but we're putting our stamp of approval here. 306 stamp of approval. And like we mentioned, we kind of got the idea from other podcasts of fantasy footballers. They do their My Guys episode. It's a big ordeal where they kind of share their ideas. I guess share some similar ideas because a couple of our guys are similar guys that they put their stamp of approval on. Other podcasts do a very similar idea, but these are the guys that we want in every one of our drafts, and B, we think can take a big step forward and potentially win you drafts. Like last year, taking Stephon Diggs in, was it the 6th, 7th round? He single-handedly could win you drafts. Getting DK Metcalf in the 5th, 6th could single-handedly win you drafts. So those are the types of players that we are targeting here that can make the big jump, especially at their ADP price, that can become very, very valuable for your team. So we have 3 guys. We're going to go through them. We'll continue them same order here. Armin will share his first one, then Zach and myself will get through our 3, and that's gonna kind of do it for our stamp of approval players here. So Armin, let's hear your first one.
all right. So my first guy that is gonna produce a bumper crop for you with high yield.
Hold on. Let's explain this, Armin. We were throwing around ideas, so we just stuck with My Guys for this year. I'm gonna come back here. Armin, tell everybody what you wanted to call it and explain it here. This SAS connection.
All right. So I either wanted to call it our bumper crop guys or our high yield players, right? Going with the farming connection in Saskatchewan, and we're in harvest time right now. We're going hard into it, as Jordan likes to say, hard in the paint into harvest here. We're looking at bumper crops. We're looking at high yields. They're hoping that we get them, right. So as we're drafting these guys, it's like sowing our seed and hoping that we're going to get high bumper crops and high yields here. So a little SAS connection there for you. I thought it was clever. Maybe you as the audience wants to tell us what you think of it, and maybe next year we can actually use that as what we call this episode.
Yeah, I almost forgot to tee you up for that one, Armin. So thank God you remembered. So let's hear your first one.
I couldn't let it slip through, man. All right, my first guy here, talked about him a lot. I'm a huge fan of him, and I love where you can get him in drafts because it makes me very comfortable and content not getting one of the top end draft picks in a league and getting more of a mid or late first round, and that's Nick Chubb. Okay. You hear people say, well, Kareem Hunt. Well, since Kareem Hunt has come into the fold, Chubb still put up almost 1,500 yards when he was healthy, almost 300 carries, right? And that year he had 36 receptions, so he still contributed a bit in the passing game, almost 300 yards in the passing game. So he put up almost 1,800 yards in that season, right? That's pretty huge, and that was with Kareem Hunt in the fold. Last year, he was injured for 4 games there, and he missed some time, but he still put up 1,200 yards total, combined yards, right? So, and he's getting drafted at RB6 on average right now. He does get drafted a little higher, so you might miss out on him, but then you'll get some other guys that are getting drafted before him usually instead. But his worst is number 20. Like some drafts, you might be just licking your chops at that last pick in the first round and still get Nick Chubb, right? Like he might come to you then. But taking him at the 6, I'm happy to do that. The guy you'd be passing on is Barkley, who there's some question marks about, JT, some question marks about, Aaron Jones in a committee backfield, right? So taking Chubb at 6, I'm very happy to do that. He can put up huge yards, even with Kareem Hunt there. They're a team that loves their run game. They love to pound the ball. They have a great offensive line with Nick Chubb, one of the best pure running backs in the league, running behind it. So I think he's going to put up another 1,400-yard rushing season and then a little bit of a bonus receiving yards on top of that.
No surprise for Armin Schellenberg's my guy number 1. He's been pumping those tires pretty hard this last little while, and I tried buying him in Dynasty. It's never gonna happen. I don't know why I keep asking him, but that's Armin's my guy for life, I think. So
yeah.
Zach, you're my guy number 1. Let's hear what you got.
All right. So bear with me here, folks. Up, down, down, left, right, BA. That's the Konami code. And if you've done any research into fantasy quarterbacks, that is the most in vogue thing you could possibly be looking for. The Konami code is in reference to quarterbacks that provide the passing and the rushing upside. My guy is Ryan Tannehill. He is the Konami code light. He's not going to give you the 800, 900 yards rushing that some other quarterbacks will, but he's going to give you 300 rushing yards and, 6, 7, 8 rushing touchdowns. Last year, Tannehill finished as the QB7 on the season. And if you take Deshaun Watson out of the equation, he finished as QB6. This offseason, what did the Titans do? They let John Smith leave, and they brought in Julio Jones. So by all estimations, that's a pretty good trade-off for the passing game. And even though he was propped up by those 7 rushing touchdowns, if he can come close to replicating those numbers, I think he's going to far exceed his average draft position of 86 and steamroll past QB 11 on the year. He's definitely somebody that I am targeting, somebody that I'm excited on drafting. I'm going to let the other people go after Mahomes and Josh Allen and Jackson and all those guys. And I'll sit back and I'll wait until the 7th or 8th round. And I'll just take Ryan Tannehill. Nice, safe guy with some nice rushing upside.
If we're going back to the Tinder episode here, I'm going to super like that one. That's oh man, he's my favorite quarterback target this upcoming season. And you just get him dirt cheap when everybody else is just going hard after quarterbacks, and you can just make a better roster altogether. I really, really like that take there, Zach.
I think the only quarterback that could possibly produce more based on their ADP is Jalen Hurts. Yep. And I think Jalen Hurts would be a bigger roll of the dice than Ryan Tannehill. I don't see how Ryan Tannehill can not succeed, or at least not match his ADP, where I could see Hurts really falling on his face.
Yeah, we're on the same wavelength here. Like as soon as you start saying, I'm like, he's gonna say Jalen Hurts. That's the only other guy I'm thinking. We're on the same page here. We're dialing it in today, folks. Okay, so I'm gonna give you my first one, and if you are any sort of fan, even a part-time fan of this show, this is gonna come to no surprise for you. My number 1 is Chris Carson. So Chris Carson might be one of the most slept on players when it comes to fantasy football every single year. Next to Aaron Jones, I think he kind of is slept on continuously, and then always kind of is like, oh, hey, why did we draft him at the back the first? And he finished top 5 again. So, but Chris Carson, he's a guy that you can get in the 3rd, 4th. Like he is dipping. And as we get closer to draft season, he's dipping again. And it's insane that every year his ADP continues to dip and dip. And then he'll light it up and everybody's like, oh yeah, next year, don't forget about Chris Carson. And then there'll be kind of some spicy takes at the start of the off season, and then they'll dwindle. And then it'll be like, oh yeah, Chris Carson, don't draft him. I don't get it, because all he's done is produced year in, year out. He's picked up the injury tag a little bit. So I think that's maybe a little bit why people have slept on him a little bit. But right now he's going ADP 31, and he's going as the 17th running back off the board. Last year, when he played, he averaged around 17 points per game, and he is, like I mentioned, always being slept on. He did nothing but win people weeks last year when he was on the field. And you can get him as your running back 2 really late. You can get him as your running back 3. And people are saying, oh yeah, well, maybe it's Rashad Penny season. Yeah, that ain't it. That ain't it. That ain't it. Okay. Like, if Rashad Penny makes the team and maybe gets through a week or two, I'll give the guy a pat on the back. Well done, Penny did it. But he is not going to eat into Chris Carson season. Okay. Chris Carson is always going to have a solid role on this team, and he is going to win people championships, especially going around his current ADP. Nobody wants to draft him. I don't get it. And then everybody's going to try and trade for him midseason, like it happens every single year. Okay. This team fired their offensive coordinator because they didn't run the ball enough. Well, who else is going to get the rock? Like I said, Rashad Penny, no, it ain't happening. Okay. He is a steal of a deal, especially at his ADP, and lock it in. He will win you championships if he continues to get the workload.
I can't argue too much with that, except I think Penny will have a little bit of value.
Yeah, hot take from last week.
Yeah, my hot take from last week. But, if they're pounding the rock, I don't see why not the Seattle offense can support 2 fantasy relevant RBs like other teams have.
It happens every year, every single year. It's like, oh man, Chris Carson went that late in your draft. It's like, he's just so disrespected. I don't get it. And he's talented. All he does is produce when he's on the field. That's all he does. And every running back misses time. I think we talked about this. Oh man, it would have been 4 episodes ago. I can't quite remember, but there was only like 3 running backs that were in the top 24, I think, that played all season, which, like, all running backs miss time. So when you say, oh, the running back's injury prone, unless he's missing like significant time every single year, then you don't have the injury prone label, right? Like, so if he stays healthy, and by stay healthy, I mean probably misses 1 or 2 weeks, that's like, lock it in.
Well, and that's the thing. He's not a major injury guy. He's getting minor nicks and injuries that are a few weeks.
And that's going to happen when you get that many touches.
Yeah.
You want to give your number 2 here, Armin? You're my guy number 2.
All right. My guy number 2. I'm sticking with the Seahawks. It's not Rashard Penny. I talked about him last week. Still going to hammer that, though. And gonna keep a close eye on it. Anyways, my guy for
oh my god, hold on, I got to interrupt here. Breaking news. This was an honorary my guy that I was gonna pitch in for me and Zach, and I just got the notification Adam Troutman is being carted off the field.
I just saw that too.
I might have to resign from this podcast because I'm about to cry here. That's honorary my guy that we are gonna have to monitor that. Sorry, breaking news there. I had to cut you off because I was going to see Zach go wheel out of the podcast and have to tell everybody why he left. So, okay, sorry for interrupting there. I'm going to continue.
Well, I'm sorry, you guys. I wasn't as high on him, but that still sucks that he's getting carted off.
Yeah.
My guy number 2 is none other than Tyler Lockett, another guy that we've been talking a lot about lately. And he is being drafted at around 52. So your 4th, 5th round in there. Okay. This is a guy, like we said before, that makes it comfortable to not pick a receiver till a bit later in the draft. He is another argument that always goes against him is that DK Metcalf is there, and he's a big dog there. And yeah, I'm not going to argue that Metcalf is the big dog in Seattle, but Tyler Lockett has had his best 2 seasons since Metcalf has come into town. So they help each other out is the thing here. It's not a one cannibalizes the other. It's one helps the other out. And by DK Metcalf taking on so many, the top corners and always being safety help and stuff, it opens Tyler Lockett up to some very big games. And you can't argue against picking up Lockett. He's going to put up points for you. Sometimes he does bust a little bit. And that's just what fantasy is all about, right? You gotta take those losses when you get them, but those highs with Tyler Lockett, oh boy, are they high, and love to have them.
We're in too many drafts together because we're going to be doing the race for Tyler Lockett, whereas ADP isn't going to be valuable anymore because we're just going to be hammering him early every time we draft against each other here, Armin.
Yeah. That's and I promise on my guy here, it won't be a guy we already talked about.
Yeah. Oh man. Yeah. His, man, especially in best ball formats, he might be the best receiver to own. Like, it's insane, but.
Oh, best ball. Smash that. Yeah.
Yeah. You're number 2 here, Zach. Let's hear it.
Alrighty. I'm going to put on my second Patriots hat for this one.
If you're asking how many hats he's got, folks, we don't have time to explain it.
Alrighty. So my guy is Damian Harris, running back 33, ADP of 83 overall, somewhere in the 6th round in a 12-team league. If you like Chris Carson, you are going to love Damian Harris. Last year in 10 games, Harris had 137 attempts, an average of 5 yards per carry for 691 yards. Last year, Carson in 12 games had 141 attempts, so about 4 more attempts. He averaged 4.8 yards per attempt, so that's less than what Harris had, and he finished the season with 681 yards rushing, 10 less than Harris. So these two guys are very similar production from last year. The only difference is you can get Carson in the 3rd round and you can get Harris in the 6th round. This is Harris's first full off season between injuries, COVID, and injuries again last year. He's healthy this offseason. By everything I've read from reporters in Boston, he looks like he's in incredible shape. Belichick has stated that he's the running back 1. That's probably the most candor that Belichick's ever had in the preseason. It's no secret that the Pats want to run the ball. Their offensive line is ginormous. As long as Harris can stay healthy, I can imagine him getting lots of opportunities throughout the season. One thing that I would be worried about, though, with Newton, especially at quarterback, I could see Newton taking some of those red zone touches away from Harris. But even if that's, the case, Harris is still really good value and somebody that could really produce for your team. I've seen a few things on Twitter saying, Matt, like the Patriots, how can you trust the backfield? Sony Michel, James White, Damian Harris, Ramondre Stevenson. Like, yeah, on the surface that makes sense, but the past 2 games, Harris has been in for 1 or 2 series, gets his feet wet, the Pats pull him out, and then they just pound the ball with their backup running backs.
Yeah. I wouldn't be surprised if they cut Michelle. Like, I think he won't be on the roster come season start.
It's clear to see that they want to keep Harris healthy. They know what they have in Harris, and they just want to pound the ball with the other guys. And something that I really noticed on Thursday watching the Pats against the Eagles is when the Pats put in their second string offensive line, these are all guys that have started multiple games in the NFL, whereas the Eagles defense were a bunch of car salesmen, a bunch of construction workers in a few weeks. And that's why those backup running backs are eating. That's why Ramondre Stevenson has 4 touchdowns in 2 games, because it's pros against Joes in the second half. So don't be scared because Harris isn't getting reps, isn't getting run in the preseason. Definitely buy into it, drink the Kool-Aid with me, and get yourself a RB2 in the 6th round.
You're almost hoping that they make that transition from quarterbacks in like week 1, week 2, Because if they make that transition now, his ADP is going to continuously climb, I would only imagine, because people are being more confident with the touchdowns.
Yeah, that's a good point for sure.
So let's fingers crossed for week 2 transition there. Hey, Zach.
Yeah.
Yeah, we won't mention on this podcast, but maybe a couple episodes later what me and Zach traded for him to be able to swindle me for Damian Harris, because that still gives me nightmares. But we'll go with my number 2 here, and once again, this one is no stretch of the imagination that he was going to be on my guys list. If I can get them both on my team, I'm going to be super happy, especially if I have that, like, I'm going to say top 5 pick in drafts. There's a really good chance that you're going to end up with, like, so say like an Alvin Kamara, Chris Carson, and this guy. And if I start with those 3 running backs, I will be extremely excited and hammering receivers late. But this one's no stretch of the imagination. If you've listened to this podcast at all, I've been pumping the tires of this individual for weeks, if not months. I think he was my hot take about 2 months ago, but it's Clyde Edwards-Helaire, the running back from the Kansas City Chiefs. His ADP is once again climbing, and that is why people are kind of were not wanting to take him because of what happened last year. His ADP climbed. He went in some drafts at the 104 position, 105, 106. He went to our staff league. Like, it's just his ADP climbed where he needed to be one of the most successful rookie running backs to be able to produce on his ADP. One reason why it would have been hard in the paint for CEH was because of his ADP. It has been an over correction by a landslide, to where people were getting CEH in the offseason in the 3rd, 4th, 5th round. Especially in those super flex leagues, you could get him in the 5th, 6th round. It was just being stupid how people had gone so far the opposite direction for CEH. We are watching his ADP slowly trickle up into the early to mid seconds at this point now. So that's going to be something to monitor for sure. But I still think even if you get him in the middle 2nd round, it is still extremely good value. Okay. Some of the negatives he had last year, he only had 4 touchdowns. Even if you give him 3 additional touchdowns, 4 additional touchdowns, he is an RB1. You were still burnt a little bit because of the draft price, but you owned a current RB1 in his rookie season. He's 21 years old. He is still younger than Najee Harris, which is so crazy to believe that he is going into his rookie season and Najee will be entering his sophomore season. It's hard to believe. But last year, he finished with 158 points in half-point formats with only 3 touchdowns. Like I mentioned, if he had a couple more touchdowns there, they were looking a lot more juicy. But he had 181 attempts, 803 yards with 4 touchdowns. Still, it's yardage after yards, and it's opportunities over and over. And if you can start kind of getting into the touchdowns and finding himself in the end zone, you got to keep in mind that he's on the number 1 offense in the NFL. And there's no stretch of the imagination that it runs through Kelsey. It runs through Mahomes, but they find themselves in the red zone more often than any team in the NFL. So he's going to continuously have the opportunities. And right now where you're drafting him is you're drafting at his floor and you're nowhere near his potential ceiling. So that is why I am all in on Clyde Edwards-Helaire. And I mean, if you listen to the podcast, you know I'm pretty hard up for him. So trying to buy him in Dynasty, it's not going well.
I like that scenario of Kamara, CEH, and Carson 3 in a row.
Could you I'm licking my chops.
Yeah.
Like it's been now maybe with the CEH creeping up a little bit, that's a little more likely, but I've seen lots of mock drafts where guys start CMC, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, and then whoever you're running back 3, like, you know what I mean? I've like seen the Dobbins, for me, it'd be obviously Chris Carson, but I've seen the Dobbins, I've seen the Montgomerys, I've seen those types of starts. And if you can start with those 3, or you can start with, like I said, obviously a good quality top 5 running back CEH, and then start getting your wide receiver ones, even yeah, it's pretty juicy, but pretty juicy. You're running back, you're my guy number 3, Armand. Your final my guy, stamp of approval.
All right, so my final my guy here. You just drafted Lockett in the 5th round there. You're happy about it. You got a good wide receiver after getting a bunch of RBs off the board. Next guy up, next round, take Brandon Ayuk. That's when you're going to get him. He's ADP is 62.5 PPR right now. At worst, he's being drafted all the way to 90. Okay. So some guys are drafting him super late, and at best 39. Okay. So not a huge reach on him for some people, but so Ayuk, he in his rookie season last year, he put up 750 yards almost at 748, and he also scored 5 touchdowns. Okay. Now, he got real hot near the end of the season, right? He started slow, but then he did not score under double-digit points from week 7 all the way to week 15. He was producing. And then after that, I think he ended up getting injured in week 16 partway through the game and missed week 16 and 17. But this is a guy I think is going to take an even bigger leap this year. He is, in my mind, without a doubt, the best receiver in San Fran. They now have Trey Lance slinging the ball, and he has looked good on the deep ball this year. So Ayuk is pretty well their only deep ball threat, but he is also a yak yards guy as well. So just he was able to do it all, and he's going to be in an offense that will be utilizing him in that way. George Kittle will be coming back, yeah, but that might open it up even more for Ayuk instead of cannibalizing each other, right? And then that run game too, they run heavy, but again, it's just going to improve his efficiency, and he is going to show up and produce, I think, because he is a yak yards guy. So they'll get him on the low routes, and then they'll hit him high on the deep ball after everybody's starting to crouch down, and that efficiency on the deep ball should be good, I think.
Serious upside in those middle rounds. Like
Yeah.
you can have him as your wide receiver 3, 4, depending on where you're starting in the draft, right? And to have a guy that has a potential season 2 breakout on a team that really likes him, and once again, a guy on a high powered offense, right? I like him. I like it, Armin. Especially me and you are on the wavelengths of the round 5 lock at round 6. You guy like that. I think we talked about that last week on the podcast. So
yeah, it's great value there, like amazing value at that deep in the draft to be getting those 2 guys, I think.
Absolutely. Zach, your final my guy number 3.
All right. So Nyheim Hines, running back 45, ADP of 134. And you can get Nyheim somewhere in the 11th round in 12-team leagues. Nyheim Hines, he's going to be a little bit more league specific to have the type of value that I'm talking about. He's obviously going to be most valuable in PPR formats. Last year in PPR formats, he finished as the running back 15. And that's right in the midst of running back 2 territory, borderline running back 1, just 3 spots away from running back 1. Last year, he's splitting time with Jonathan Taylor in Indy, and now Marlon Mack is coming back, but he's coming back from an Achilles injury that we haven't really seen him produce in the preseason so far. So I'm not afraid of Marlon Mack at this point, taking away reps from Hines. And I've seen some rumors preseason that speculated that Mack might be a really good trade candidate for a team like the Rams, who they're dealing with a little bit of injuries at that position now. So even if Mack is healthy, he might not be on the team for long. This is a starter that you can get in the late rounds after most, if not all, the other starting running backs are off the board. Of all the RBBC, or all the backup running backs that are going to be available at the second half of your draft, he's the one to own for me. He'd be in the same territory as like a Tony Pollard or JD McKissick or Jamal Williams, but I think Hines has shown the pedigree, and he's somebody that I'm really high on, and he's somebody that I'll be excited to get. even a round earlier just to make sure that I get him in the 10th round. So Nyheim Hines is somebody that you can definitely count on to produce for you guys.
Well, and he won people weeks while we were waiting for the JT breakout, right? It was like, is JT breakout coming? Is it coming? Nope. And Nyheim Hines was absolutely balling out there for everybody last season. So it's there's nothing that's pointed at that JT's officially taken over, right? So if he doesn't have that takeover, or God forbid some injury happens, Nyheim Hines is like you mentioned, he's right in that juicy handcuff territory that might be worth buying up for. So I like it. I got him in the same trade I got JT for. So unfortunately, I'm just in the handcuff territory, not necessarily the same upside territory. But my final one here, you guys, is somebody I put my money in my mouth on, and I traded for in the off season. And ironically enough, I got him in the same trade. I got Jamal Williams, another guy I mentioned earlier in the pod. So this one is another three-headed monster receiving room, and it is Deontay Johnson. I've seen a lot of people going hard saying it's Claypool time, it's Claypool breakout. It's possible. I won't disagree. That is possible. But I'm going to tell you why I think it's Deontay Johnson. One, we've already seen it. Okay. We've already seen him find great success this past year in these reconstructed new look we've seen from the Pittsburgh Steelers. Okay. They want to run the ball. We already talked about that with Najee Harris, but their offensive line got even worse. Okay? And with Big Ben, with his injuries, they want to get the ball out of his hand as quick as possible. So that is where Deontay Johnson absolutely ate last year. He was a target machine coming with 144 targets, but unfortunately only getting 88 receptions. He did have a bit of the drops. He was benched a couple times, which is partly why his numbers are a little bit lower than you would expect. He had 924 yards and 7 TDs, which is nothing to scoff at, but with the amount of drops that had come, unfortunately, he did see a bit of dip in his potential upside. Okay. Part of the reason why his ADP is where it is all three of them are in the same boat. Deontay Johnson, Claypool, and Juju Smith. They're all kind of being drafted in the same wavelength because nobody really knows who the one is or who has the highest potential upside. And Deontay Johnson has already established himself as the, I would call, solidified one. It's just people think, is there going to be a Claypool breakout that will take it over? Okay. If we have seen anything from the Pittsburgh Steelers in this past season or anything moving forward, that I think it is maybe not necessarily unlikely that Claypool does boom a little bit, but I think it's that Deontay Johnson is going to continuously have significant value because of those receptions. The ball is out of the hand quick. And if I'm looking for somebody in that 5th, 6th round, his ADP is wide receiver 22 and he's ADP 56. He is continuously getting peppered the ball, and he has significant value because of target monster. Okay? He's a target monster, and he's going to continuously be eating into those receptions. And like I mentioned, with that offensive line dwindling, I think he is the receiver to own. People are sleeping on him. I think out of all three of my guys, people are continuously sleeping on him. Maybe that's why their ADP is where it is. But Deontay Johnson put up some monster weeks last year. If he can figure out the dropsies, which lots of receivers do throughout their career, I think that with those 144 targets, that is something that to be desired in the 5th, 6th, sometimes even 7th round for Deontay Johnson. So he is my guy number 3.
Now, what do you think about this, Jordan? Say you're in the middle, you're like 5'7", all right? You're picking 5'7", and all three of the Pittsburgh receivers are there. Do you pick one? You say you take Johnson, or do you wait until you're back at after the turn in the 6th round and you just take whoever's left?
So personally, me, I'm taking Deontay just because I have that firm belief in him, but I'm not going to tell anybody they're wrong by just waiting and taking the value, right? It's still up in the air, which is why obviously I mentioned all three of them are kind of sitting where they're sitting. But I have that firm belief in Deontay Johnson. If you believe in Claypool, it's probably one of the similar reasons that those targets are going to go somewhere. Maybe that the drops are something that you can kind of fade Johnson a little bit. but obviously there's a reason why I'm putting him as my guy. I think those targets and that amount of receptions is something to be desired, and it's hard to come for, especially in a guy that's in this, like we mentioned, the 6th round. And there might even be people that are going to try and take Claypool even in front of him. So it's part of knowing your league. I think roster construction, and the way I construct my roster is I want the big running backs early, and then I want the safe receivers with the kind of sprinkling in a little bit of the potential upside guys. So my preference of roster construction, especially looking at my guys, I have the big upside running backs, and then I'm going to take a safe guy like I talked about McLaurin at the start of the episode. I'm going to take a safe guy like Johnson, and then I'm going to go hard in the paint with upside guys, maybe even like round 5, like Armin mentioned, Lockett, serious upside, and then get Deontay Johnson in the 6th round. I would be very, very satisfied with that, because you have the boom weeks of Lockett and you have the very safe floor with Deontay Johnson.
Would playing in a different format change that for you?
Yeah, if I'm in a standard league, I think this is a little bit different, because obviously this is strictly off of being a target monster. 7 touchdowns might be tough for him to repeat. Not here, let's say he can't, but 7 touchdowns might be tough. Looking at the yards, he's 924 yards. Nothing to scoff off either, but in a standard league, we're really looking at those 144 targets. So in a PPR format, I really like him. Standard league, maybe fading him a little bit more, but I still like, obviously, the yardage that can potentially come from 144 targets as well. So
absolutely.
See, for me, I'm going to play devil's advocate here a bit on the Steelers offense. I would be Najee Harris is known to be a great receiving back, right?
Yep.
So those short routes, some of them are going to be lost to Najee. So I'd be more inclined to take the guy who's not losing his targets to the running back and Chase Claypool, the guy who's more the deep threat in that offense. But that'd be my personal preference there.
Yeah, it also the thing to think about too is like, are we going to see Big Ben try and take more shots down the field? Well, it's another year older. I haven't really seen anything to make it more confident in that. Obviously, if you're gonna be a betting man, you're gonna say the ball's gonna come out of the hand more often. And I think that it's going to be check down, like much the same as you saw Ebron had a pretty successful year last year because it was continuous check. He also had a case of the dropsies too, but he was a check down. So if Najee's swing routes or Najee's screens are going to eat in anybody's reception, I think he'll be the tight end position. Just because of the routes that have been ran. Obviously, like you mentioned, the Claypool downfield, Deontay underneath, and then Juju kind of sitting on in the flats there is kind of the safety valve. So I still think he's pretty solidified, and especially if he worked on the hands a little bit and he's going to come down with one of those 144 targets, then I'm gonna be really happy with that. So
yeah, that'd boost his points from last year quite a bit if he could catch even 20 more of his targets, right? That's 20 more points in PPR format.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that'll pretty well do it here. We threw lots of names at you guys, and obviously there's pros and cons to both ends of our guys we mentioned, but that'll do it for episode number 16. This has been the Sleeper, ADP Darling, and obviously our My guys that we have been sharing. Good luck in your drafts, first of all. As draft season comes along, hopefully you guys end up with some of the same guys on our rosters here. We'll keep you posted with how the 306 Fantasy Football Charity League goes. If you have any questions about your draft or guys that we also like, feel free to message us. I know there's been lots of guys that message on Instagram, Twitter, all those platforms as well too. So feel free to contact us. We're excited for the league to start. I'm sure you guys are excited as well. But that is episode number 16. Thanks again for listening. Share us on obviously all the socials, and as per usual on YouTube, hit the subscribe, and on the podcast platforms as usual. So that'll do it for episode number 16, everybody. Thank you very much for listening. Good luck in the drafts, and fantasy season's here, baby. Let's get it going.